Okay.
Okay. Good morning. It's May 21st, 2019, and I will call the meeting of the Story County Board of Supervisors to order. And please feel free to join us, if you would wish, as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. We now have public comment session number 1, and that's for anybody who wants to comment on anything that's on the agenda today. And if you would like to comment, please go over here to the speaker. Seeing nobody move in that direction, I'll close the public comment period. Next, we have an update on the Lincoln Highway Heritage Byway and our Corridor Management Plan by Jan Gannon, our coordinator of this program. Good morning, Jan.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. I'm with Prairie Rivers of Iowa. It is a 501c3 based in Ames, Iowa.
Hold on a second here. I think someone turned something on.
Okay.
Don't come on now.
You're gonna be bored.
Yeah, this will be my last meeting.
You just can't hear me? I'm too short?
Let's try it again.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep, you're going to have to speak up for us, though.
Okay, we'll do. I'm with Prairie Rivers of Iowa. It's a 501c3 based in Ames, Iowa. There are several, 2 board members in the audience right now. Mike Cox is serving on our board, and Linda Merkin is on the board as well, and Rick Sanders is a former board member. We work primarily in watershed work, and then the program I'm with is the Lincoln Highway Heritage Byway. So if you don't know anything about the Lincoln Highway, it was formed back in 1913 as an idea of Carl Fisher's, and he had already started the Indianapolis 500 by the time he had the idea for the Lincoln Highway. He first called it the Coast to Coast Rock Highway. Just wanted it to be an all-weather road to get from one side of the country to the other. So it begins in Times Square and goes to San Francisco, going through 13 states. And in Iowa, it goes through 13 counties, including Story County. It starts in Clinton and goes all the way to Council Bluffs. So the Lincoln Highway Association was formed back in 1913 to promote the road. And once they felt that it was pretty much an all-weather road, there were some parts of it that were paved, some of it was still gravel. It was signed, it had the big L logo on it, and then they converted to the highway system, the numbering system, and so they felt their job was done. So they disbanded and gave all their information to the University of Michigan, and then in 1991, a group of people, that was the 1930s when they disbanded. In 1991, a group of people in Jefferson, Iowa, decided they wanted to save a bridge, and they formed the Greene County Lincoln Highway Association, and a year later they created the National Lincoln Highway Association. So they went, this new association went to the DOT and said, we want to be part of your Scenic Byway program. So I put a packet, in your packet, information about the Scenic Byway program in Iowa. There's 14 of them right now. So with our agreement with the DOT, they outsource the management to groups like Prairie Rivers, and we oversee the Lincoln Highway for the DOT program. Part of our responsibility is to create a corridor management plan, and it is about 400 pages long, maybe. You can download it either on the DOT website or on the Prairie Rivers website. But we did compile a lot of information in there. We did look at other county and city comprehensive plans to see what's already on the books for these different areas and how we could fit in with that. Plus, we also had public input meetings. This one is in, we had a state center, Colo combo meeting there in State Center, and then we had one at the Nevada Library too. And we had one in Ames, but I failed to take pictures, so we were at the Ames Library as well. Trying to figure out what kind of local and state projects we could have, as well as what's already on the books. So we got a lot of good public input. And then out of that information, we created these 3 brochures. The one in 2016 talks about the 6 intrinsic qualities that make up a byway. It's archaeological, cultural, historical, natural, scenic, and recreation. And so it's kind of color-coded. It goes through all 13 counties and tells you what you can see in each of those categories. And then in 2017, we created a camping and recreation brochure, and that, when you're driving a historic highway, you don't always think, oh, I could go camping there. So we thought that this would bring another group of people to the mix to travel the Lincoln Highway and experience it. Then in 2018, we created this Junior Explorer booklet. It has games and puzzles geared towards kids. And then the back side of it has a place where you can get a stamp at the advertisers inside the booklet and stamp the back of your booklet and then turn it in for a prize. But we didn't put an age group on it, so anybody can do this and get a prize. Also, we have been working on interpretation across Iowa. This is one of the things they say heritage tourism really needs in Iowa is explanation of what you're looking at when you're looking at it. So the upper left-hand corner is an Eagle Scout project in Tama, Iowa. You can just barely make out the bridge behind them. It spells out Lincoln Highway on the side panels of that bridge. It's a very unique, very historic bridge, and we help them put together some information about the Boy Scouts. Back in 1928, Boy Scouts across America installed concrete markers along the Lincoln Highway, all across the nation. And so we've always had, the Lincoln Highway's always had a pretty good connection with Boy Scouts because of that. Then on the right-hand side is the Deep Rock Station in Jefferson, Iowa. That's owned by the city of Jefferson, and they've restored that to use more as a museum type of structure. And we did set up for RAGBRAI and hand out water and information there when they went through last year. Then down below are 3 smaller panels that will go at the entrance of Jefferson around one of those Boy Scout markers that will be installed there. Then in the lower left is Henry Osterman. He was the first field secretary for the Lincoln Highway Association, and he has quite a colorful history. He started out as a newsboy, taking care of himself at age 6 in New York City. Then at 14, he joined the Navy. He served for 3 years, and then he kind of traveled around the country doing different things. He worked for Bill Hickok's Wild West show and learned promotions out there. And he also traveled the transcontinental route before it was even an idea of anybody else's. He traveled in 1908 and 1912 with the Lincoln Highway then starting in 1913. So he knew his way around, and the Lincoln Highway Association hired him to help lay out the route and help promote the road along the way. He also served in 1917. He was piloting Army convoys up and down the East Coast. So he kind of put those 2 ideas together and said, let's do a convoy across the nation. And so that was in 1919. Then in 1920, he was on his 21st trip across the nation, and he went around a corner too fast. He was trying to overtake another motorist outside of Montour, Iowa, and he tipped over and lost his life immediately. Now, some of the current statewide projects we're working with the American Society of Civil Engineers on a Historic Landmark Award. We're also helping the Lincoln Highway Association. We do their newsletter, website, Facebook, and then I serve as their secretary. We also work with Travel Iowa to encourage attractions to be listed for free on the state website, and then they pull from that listing for the printed materials that they give out. We also help form an alliance with the states of Ohio, Indiana, Iowa, and Nebraska. It's state byways in those states. Illinois is a national byway, and the other on the east and west coast are not named byways, but you can still drive the whole route. And then I help take inventory of missing signs along the route and make sure those get replaced. Some of our current Story County projects are the Reed and Island Corner. We helped the Lincoln Highway Association and the City of Colo to find a new proprietor there that would take care of the cafe and run the motel. There's 6 units there that you can rent. It's actually the intersection of 2 historic roads, with the Jefferson Highway being a north route that connects onto the Lincoln Highway and then heads on into Nevada. We're working with 2 different groups that will do reenactments this year of the 1919 military convoy that Mr. Osterman came up with the idea for. So August 23rd and September 6th, they will be in this area. And I'm also working with Nevada Nice, and they want to use the Jefferson logo and the Lincoln Highway logo on different things, on signage and painting them on posts and things like that. So, and then they've just renamed the park out in front of the City Hall as the Lincoln Highway and Jefferson Highway Heritage Park. So that's, and I believe they'll be putting signs around that wrought iron railing there. So my point today was to come to you and tell you what we're up to, and to let you know that we do have some projects in store for Story County, and we would like you to help support those. If we need letters of support, that we could come to the Board of Supervisors to get that. And then we also, if you have projects that we can help you with, to be sure to call on us, that we're here to help the residents of Story County and the Board of Supervisors. So I guess if you have any questions or comments, I'm open to that. Otherwise, I put my business card in there, and I did put in the state and county projects in your packets. And I didn't talk about this, but Schmeekley Reserve is an outside company that did an interpretive plan for us, and they came up with what they thought needed to be interpreted, and that's in your packet. But it pretty much mirrors what we found in our community meetings as well.
Super. So are we going to have the military convoy at the Lincoln Highways Parade?
That's what I hear. Yeah, the first convoy is restored military vehicles. They say about 50 to 70 vehicles, and they'll be kind of bumper to bumper. They'll be overnighting in DeWitt, and then in Marshalltown, and then the day of Lincoln Highway Days, they should be coming through Nevada. And then they'll overnight again in Denison.
Okay.
So they have 3 stops. The other group is classic and contemporary cars, and they'll only make 2 stops. They'll be overnighting in Marshalltown and Council Bluffs.
Okay. Thanks. Lois, did you have any questions?
I did. Jan, the first one is then how are you funded?
We're funded a little bit by the DOT through their program, but then that's just basically for time. And then any projects we do are up to me to find the grants for them or find funding for it.
Okay. The first year I was here as a supervisor, I got a bill. A bill came across my desk, was passed on by the chair, and I remember it was a small amount, $30,000 or whatever, to the membership for the year, and I didn't know if we still pay yearly a membership dues to you guys, or if that's now through Prairie Rivers. Okay.
Do you know anything about that, Mike? Like Prairie Rivers?
No.
Byway.
No, this was for the byway. It was literally, It was Lincoln Highway byway.
No, we've not come to the supervisors for
Okay.
dollars
All right.
for
I just
byway.
and I passed this on, but yeah.
Been in this position now for 5 years, so
Okay.
not that I know of. No.
Got a flash drive and a bill for for $30. It was like, well, so all right. Thank you very much. Hadn't seen anything since.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
It was very informative. Okay. Now we'll head to consideration of personnel actions, and I'm told we should...
We've got
Oh,
agency reports.
Agency reports. We're not going to get through this meeting as fast as I thought. I'm sorry. Got to check me on that. Agency reports, Iowa Able Annual Report. Anna Magnuson, I'm so sorry about that.
I feel pressure. I'm already.
Good morning.
We're good. Good morning, Anna.
Yes, thank you so much for having me come to your meeting. My name is Anna Magnuson. I'm the Executive Director of the Iowa Able Foundation, and I started last year. And so before I even officially started, this was my first official meeting with Iowa Able Foundation, and came with Jill Crosser. And you might remember, too, that I thought I couldn't even say the mission statement at that time, so I was nervous I was going to be fired before I even officially started. And also, so I remember coming to this meeting and learning about Iowa Able Foundation. I grew up in Iowa, but I had never made it to Ames, Iowa. I left for 20 years and then came back to my home state last year. So I was a little nervous coming back to Ames, but I just would like to thank everyone in Story County for being so welcoming. So I met Brenda Dreyer here at this very meeting, who introduced me to half the people I know now, which is wonderful. And I had many other obstacles where I didn't know the asset program at all, but Deb Childress, who's here today, was kind enough to give me a one-on-one session to learn about that. I've met George Belitzos and some others who have just been very kind and welcoming to my new hometown. So why do I mention that? Is because when Iowa Able Foundation, when we achieve our mission and we fulfill the vision that we have for all of Iowans with disabilities, their families, and the aging population, we're creating a diverse and inclusive community, because we know that every time that we provide a loan or we help empower one of our clients to be able to understand what their budget is and to be able to use credit responsibly, that they are part of the fabric of our community and that they are participating and they are living full lives in Story County. And we're really excited about that when we get stories about people who have a wheelchair or they have a ramp and they're able to enjoy their hometown. They're contributing to what makes Story County great. So that's why we're excited to be part of Iowa Able Foundation. So what is Iowa Able Foundation? Just a quick refresher. So we're a nonprofit regulated lender that provides loans for people, again, with disabilities and the aging. We provide loans for assistive technology, home modifications, vehicle modifications, anything that they might need to be able to achieve and maintain independence. We also have a loan that is a credit builder loan, which is an unsecured loan that works much like a credit card. And that helps people be able to build credit score and to be able to become financially stable. And then the third loan is our self-employment loan. So if you're looking for employment, if you want to start a t-shirt business or a dog walking business, which I'm losing my dog walker at the end of this summer because she's graduating, which I'm quite sad about. So if you know a dog walker, if you want to start a dog walking business, I digress, sorry. We'll also provide startup funds for that as well. In addition, with that loan program, if you do not qualify for the loan, we get through the end of the loan call and we see that you are short and making payments, then we refer you to our financial coaching program, which is a one-on-one program that works with people to be able to help work through their budgets, to be able to strengthen their financial position, to come back and apply for a loan. So the goal really is to move individuals from being unbankable to bankable, to moving them into mainstream banking, which is one of our measures of success. But more so, it's, again, I just go back to helping people fulfill the lives that they want to and that they dream for themselves. So what's the exciting update that I have for you, which I do know, and I have full disclosure, I sound like a complete nerd, but we got through strategic planning. And last month, our board of directors approved our strategic plan, which really is a bold move because we will have a vision statement, which we didn't have before. And the other thing that I'm most excited about is that we'll enhance our loan program. So right now, if you might recall from last year, our unsecured credit card loans are 14.25% interest rate, and the other loans are 9.25%. So for me, when I looked at that, I don't think that's, if we're serving the most vulnerable of our population, that's not an interest rate that is, it's better than a bank, it's better than payday lending, but I think that we can do better. And so what the board approved is a sliding scale interest rate based on annual income to be able to help all of our Iowans that need our services and to meet them where they're at. Because I know in the last 10 months that I've been on the job, when I get the phone call from the mom who says, I need a vertical lift for my son who will live in my basement for the rest of his life, and my nightmare at night for my husband and myself that lady, is that if I die and my husband dies, what happens to my son? And so I don't want to tell that mother in Story County that I can't, or Iowa Able Foundation can't help that mother because our interest rate is too high. I don't want to do it. And so our board has agreed to help us pilot this program in the fall. In addition, our financial empowerment program, the financial coaching is great. It's one-on-one sessions and we work with our clients. But I also think that we need to enhance our financial literacy program. And there are wonderful partners that have agreed to help us pilot a program in the fall that, for example, the credit builder loan. So right now, we don't provide any education that goes with that credit builder loan. They get approved, they have the credit builder loan. Now, I went to the University of Iowa, sorry everyone, and I just know being on the Ped Mall when I got a credit card at 18, and that interest rate was 20.25% or whatever it was, and I got that credit card because I wanted the bag of M&Ms and the tote bag. I used that credit card to go to the field house to be able to pay for my roommates, for them to like me basically, to pay for items that I didn't need. I had no idea how to use a credit card, and so when my dad got that bill and saw that I had exceeded the maximum, he was not happy. So I just think that that personal story is a personal failing of my own, but also I think it is it's a organizational failure on our part not to be able to provide the education for what is credit, what is responsible credit building. And so we're building an education program, not reinventing the wheel. We're using help from the FDIC with their Money Smart program. There's Next Gen, there are all sorts of curriculum, and Vicki Hales, who works at Ames High School, is helping us as part of that committee to help us build a curriculum that makes sense for our organization. And so that will pilot again in the fall of this year. So I'm very excited about that because I think it will serve Story County better. So this this strategic plan, we serve all 99 counties in Iowa, but the plan is for the next 3 to 5 years is to focus on where we live in Story County. We're going to get it right here and make sure that everyone in Story County who needs our services gets it. And then Polk County and Blackhawk County are the 3 counties that we will focus on for the next 3 to 5 years. So that's the exciting moving forward and vision that we have for Iowa Able Foundation. Right now we currently have 54 active loans. Our average loan amount is $3,500. Most of those loans right now are for hearing aids. That's our #1 loan request that we have right now. So that is Iowa Able Foundation in a nutshell, and I just wondered if you have any questions. And again, thank you for your support and we're right behind the Dunkin' Donuts, so on Sheldon. So if you want to come and have a cup of coffee and some donuts, I'd love to meet with you and chat with you about what we're doing and update. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Questions?
No, just a comment. I remember a year ago. Okay. So, wow, you have really moved along and moved the organization along. Congratulations.
Yeah, and that's, again, because of the people in Story County who have been willing to help Iowa Able, so I really appreciate that.
I'm interested in strategic planning. I'd love to see what you've come up with on your strategique plan sometime.
Well, I have a copy of it, and so our strategic planning facilitator put it on the biggest paper possible. So if you'd like to, I can leave that if you like.
If that's an extra,
Yes.
I would love to see that.
Absolutely.
No rules at all. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. Now we will have
chocolate.
Oh, this was from you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, we have a run on June 22nd at the Ada Hayden Park. So my program manager would hate me for not saying that. So we hope you're there.
Okay, thank you. Now, I won't skip anything else, so I'll try not to. Consideration of minutes.
I would move as they were presented this morning. Approval as presented this morning.
Okay, and I would second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Then, consideration of personnel actions. I've been informed we should pull the one for Christian Pearson. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion for all the rest of the personnel actions.
I would move with the pulling of the one mentioned before.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now consent agenda. And there was an item that you wanted to pull, Loris?
Yes, I'd like to pull item 7, so I would move approval of the consent agenda with the exception of item 7, which is the fiscal year 20 YSS contract.
Okay, I would second the motion. I would also point out that we had a wrong date on it. It was set effective 7/1/10. It actually should be 7/1/19 for future reference. Olson?
Aye.
Merkin, aye. Consent agenda is approved.
Yeah, okay. We'd like to just quickly talk about number 7. I think we'll be short on this, Deb, because really just pulled it to sort out more information.
Okay.
So I don't anticipate any action on this today, on this contract. I've been gathering some more information as we've been talking in the last day or so. Of course, I was gone last week, so I didn't know it was coming on the agenda, but I think that we still have the possibility of some duplicate services, and so I'd like to work with staff to figure out how we work this out so that we make sure all the services that can be provided are being provided, and also maybe talk to the county attorney. Maybe we split out 2 contracts. Look at how we might handle that. Part of the services that I have in question just are because there's a grant that's given by the state that pays for some of the same services, may pay. That's one of our issues. We're not sure they're duplicate services, but may actually be paying for services. And therefore, if we pay YSS for the services also, do we have duplicate services or not?
So am I correct, Deb, that the grant is for July 1/19 through June 30, 2019 to 2020?
So
Do we know the end date?
it's Community and Family Resources who got the Iowa Department of Health grant. And it's my understanding they got 2 grants. They've got one grant that started in January of this year already, which is that integrated network grant, which is going to be the grant that drives the community needs study that they will be doing this summer. And then they've got dollars through DPH for prevention and treatment services, which I believe would fund these similar kinds of substance abuse and gambling prevention kinds of services. But again, that will dovetail based on the needs that the first grant in the study will do. So that second grant that is treatment and prevention services, I'm not sure of the term for that grant. Is it the same?
It originally, I think, was only supposed to be a 1 year, but the last time they let this grant, the Iowa Department of Public Health just let it continue at 6 months and 6 months. So the last term of this 1 year grant ended up being like 2.5 years. So, and it's a very competitive bid process. So I don't have clarification from Michelle Delarive if she's just submitted information for 1 year or if it really is only a 1 year grant.
So we need clarification on that.
Right.
The other thing I would like clarification on, because I do think if this contract is discussed next week, I think it's only fair to invite YSS to be present to answer any questions. So just for clarification, which services are we looking at?
So I looked at the asset book. I believe the duplication of services appear this year under public education. In the previous 2 years, YSS had listed the amount coming from Story County itself because the grant from public health did not cover all of the costs that YSS felt they were getting with this substance abuse prevention. $49,000 extra was requested of us to provide the same services covered under this grant before. So the cost was more. Now the request this year is shifted into public education, and the request is $167,000. And is my understanding after initial conversations with Andrew Allen and Michelle Della Riva, who are the two executive directors involved, that the grant portion that in the past YSS was the subcontractor for under the Iowa Department of Public Health was about $120,000 or so. So now YSS is asking Story County, if I understand this correctly, is asking Story County alone, doesn't count what they're asking United Way for and the city of Ames, but we're worried about Story County money, is about $120,000 more to provide those same services. But the Iowa Department of Public Health grant is paying Community and Family Services to provide what we believe are the same services.
But Community and Family Services is not going to provide services until after the assessment is done. Is that correct?
Well, that was what the original our understanding is. My exchange with Michelle Della Riva last night was just via very quick text and email. That's all. So we don't even have the information to bring back here at this point. My initial thought that I want to explore more with staff and with Ethan Anderson is maybe we split out the questions that are of concern and just put a shorter termination notification date on. This contract we have in front of us right now, it's a 90-day notification if we want to tell YSS that we want out of some term of it. I'm thinking maybe we just split it out in next week. This is just a thought at this point. We go ahead and move all of the possible duplication services, and we just go ahead and we put that in one contract, and that comes before the board with a 90-day regular termination. And then we take a look at these possible duplication of services and either look at a shorter 60-day, because there will be, I think we quickly discussed this, probably an overlap if there's a transfer. The other thing is I don't think we want to cancel the services even that are in question of being duplicates, because the assessment from Community and Family Services until they get this needs assessment done is it may be the demand for this particular group of services will be more than CFR can deliver under the grant, and therefore YSS would also be delivering some of these services.
I'm hearing a lot of unknowns here.
A lot of unknowns. So all I want to do right now is pull it and work more with staff and the attorney's office to figure out more clarity. I just want to see that we're not spending money out of our very valuable asset funds, that when another agency already is receiving state funds to provide that service, but nor do I want to lock us out from being able to provide the full realm of services in Story County.
Yeah, and I think the timeline is important for that reason.
Right.
What is it that's going to happen with this assessment? When might it even be done? Because we're really, a lot of the questions you're asking, I don't think we know until we have that assessment.
Well,
Would you agree with that?
Oh, I agree.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I think we definitely, and we need YSS at the table to help discuss this. But just a note on the public education and awareness, so even though they asked for the $160-some thousand, the amount in the contract is $97,665.
Right.
So it's less than what they requested.
Right.
And under public education and awareness is a variety of topics. It's not just substance abuse. It includes adolescent pregnancy. It includes AIDS, HIV, I believe tobacco prevention, and some substance abuse. So it's a catch-all category for a variety of topics that YSS goes out to schools and community groups to provide preventive
it does
services.
need to be sorted out. We've been aware of this now for 6 or 7 months because I was first contacted as the grant application was being written. I sit on the CFR board, so disclosure there, but in the past, for many years, I sat on the YSS board. Sorry, not the board, but the policy board and other boards for YSS. And so one of the things is sitting on the CFR board, there's no financial remuneration or benefit that comes more to CFR by having a change with YSS. I kind of saw you smile when I said I sit on the CFR board. What has happened is because I knew CFR had applied for this grant with YSS, I was contacted by YSS, is I became aware of the problem very early, before ever the grant was awarded. I was aware that there was a concern by YSS they were losing out on some of this money back in, I believe, December. So it came up before the asset members, volunteers heard presentations from YSS, and the asset admin team's been aware of this. And at various times, as the admin team has tried to sort out what exactly services might be duplicate and what aren't. It's just been this rolling kind of event due to the needs assessment survey. So, and I don't want to leave YSS in the lurch also, because this is their staff programming money, is my understanding. Is that your understanding too, Deb?
Well, yeah, I mean, the bulk of their budget, because it's people providing services that all goes towards the staff costs.
Let me ask a couple questions to see how we're going to do this.
Right.
Have you gotten all your questions to Deb?
Well, I have several times provided my questions to Deb. And so Deb has been able to provide what we know at this point. We're back to, we don't know. We discussed, Deb and I discussed at one point, having a sit down with the executive director from YSS and CFR to figure out which services were in fact possible duplicate services. YSS used to be the subcontractor. See, this money was CFR in the grant and used to be the subcontractor. So I feel that Deb has answered them. The admin team has discussed this to the extent we all can, until, yes, that there's some comparison of the two sets of services.
So we can't do that next Tuesday. We're talking about putting this back on the board agenda for next Tuesday.
So
I'm trying to figure out if we're going to be ready to do that, what more information we need, and whether if we put it on the board agenda next Tuesday, we're just going to have the same discussion, or we're going to be at a place to resolve something.
No, my concern at this point is that if we sign the contract with YSS, the earliest we can get out for any of the services is with providing a 90-day termination notice. So all I want to do is shorten, after conferring, sending to the Ethan, and I said, so what can we do if I don't want to have us be paying for a full quarter if it turns out there are duplicate services down the road? And so Ethan came back and said, how about 60 days? So we would be saying we would pay YSS for all the services that are listed today, but taking out this category of services that we think may be duplicate and putting a shorter termination notice in it. That's what I think I'm headed, based just upon all the feedback I've gotten from everybody today, so that YSS would next week have all the other services where there's no question about it that they're providing. That'd be in one contract. This is just my thought. In one contract with the 90-day termination notice. And then what we have, what we figured out, if you will, I think that category of services for the $97,000 would just have a shorter termination notice from us of 60 days, so that we're not paying for an additional month if we find out there are duplicate services being set up. That's why.
Deb, what is your thought about that idea, if I might ask?
I think it's too early in the process to really know how this is all going to sort out, because we don't have the results of a community assessment from CFR, and so
we'd be guessing.
Yes.
And all that splitting out down to 60 days would be is when we have all the information down the road, if we discover that we don't want to continue with YSS being the primary provider of those services, that we then have a shorter period of time where we're still obligated to pay for those services.
And remember, they draw the money down, so we're not paying a 12th. We don't pay just a flat fee every month.
Correct.
They provide detail and bill after the month. The
So it's on a
services.
reimbursable basis.
It's
Correct.
so they'd
Yes.
still be able,
Yep.
but I just want to shorten the time frame if we provide notice that we would like them to shift over to be able to, if you will, draw down some of the for CFR to draw down some of the Iowa Public Health Services
So
instead.
the other question there, though, would be if it turned out that some service were to be shifted from YSS to CFR, how long it would take them to be ramped up to do those services. And that's the other thing that's unknown, and I don't know if they can even say right now. I think we're trying to guess too many things here.
Well, the one thing that I
don't see
feel
if-
comfortable knowing is that YSS was receiving for these same services. There's no change in services than what YSS was providing last year. These were services covered under the Iowa Department of Health grant. So what YSS has done is said, well, since we're not going to be the subcontractor anymore, and we didn't get the grant because of a change, a shift in how they of this, and CFR going alone. I think the difference is that YSS has just turned around and said, so we're just going to go ahead and ask for county asset dollars and other asset dollars to provide the services. So even though the CFR is getting that money to provide those services now, we don't know whether they're going to or not. That's why I'm fully fine with signing a contract. It's just how quickly can we make the shift. My concern is given how adamant YSS is about this money. I mean, they filed an appeal down at the state challenging the contract, which I did understand I did receive from Michelle last night. Michelle has talked to Iowa Department of Public Health, and they believe that a ruling will come with that within the next couple weeks. I was provided caveat, though, that the appeal process is only against whether Iowa Department of Public Health went ahead and erred in issuing the RFP. It does not whether CFR played, quote unquote, fairly, my word, okay, with YSS. So you've got two agencies pitted against each other, and I don't want to lock either agency out, but I don't want to get in a situation where YSS is adamant that they're going to get asset money to provide the same service that they used to be paid for by the Iowa Public Department of Health, when the Iowa Department of Public Health is now going to pay somebody else for that service.
Okay, my initial reaction to this is after hearing all of these unknowns versus on one side and getting out of a contract 30 days earlier than we might otherwise on another side, I don't think it's worth going through all of this to try to forge a new agreement. I think we're talking about 90 days versus 60 days. I don't see that as a lot of time. That's after hearing all of this and all the things we're coming up with, as we don't know about an appeal, we don't know what the assessment's going to say, we don't know exactly what services, we don't know how fast CFR would ramp up. I just don't think it's worth throwing all those uncertainties out there and trying to guess at those and make a separate contract.
I don't want to
that
guess.
has 30 days. Well, okay. Then what are you proposing?
All I'm
We're
proposing
going to
is
know all these things. We're not going to know the results of the assessment.
So I'm
for
proposing
months.
just that our contract for this particular group of services be a shorter termination time period. So YSS could end up, by the time we're through getting all these questions answered, we could be 5 months into the new contract.
Well, and that's my concern. I don't want to see there be a loss of service while this
Right.
is all trying to be sorted out.
Right.
Because YSS has been in the schools, they've had the relationships with those schools for many years and are making those plans for the next school year. And so I don't want to see that loss while we don't know for sure what all is going to go on. And then giving time, if CFR is going to be providing these services, giving them time to make the adjustments they need to in order to provide the necessary level
Which
of
is
service.
why I'm offering 60 as the compromise. Otherwise, I was voting no on the contract, okay, at 90 days. I can tell you that right now. Because it's not like this has just come up.
No, but
This
but
has
keep
been
in
for
mind,
6 months.
Keep in mind, though, when YSS turned in this budget, it was the end of September.
I know that.
So it was before, and they were working side by side at that point in time with CFR to jointly submit the grant to DPH. And then found out after the fact that CFR was going to go alone with submitting the grant. This came to Assets' attention.
After the fact of the asset submission.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Right.
And it came to Assets' knowledge during the agency hearings in January.
Right.
And then we didn't fully understand the scope of what was going on until about a couple of months ago.
Right.
So the allocation process was completed. The allocations and recommendations were brought to the Board of Supervisors and the other funders, and those were approved. And so the contract is just that vehicle to be able to provide those dollars to YSS
Right.
and other agencies.
Right. But in the meantime, between, as this all has gone on, it's become clear. Where I am back on this is could be, I don't know, maybe as little as 80, but looks like just from what now was awarded and we approved for the award for this division of services, right? It could be $100,000 or likely less, though, I think, but still significant amount. There was a $700,000 shortfall between the requests and the money available for asset funding this year. And so
For all funders.
For all funders. Okay. So I just want to make sure that we're not paying out to an agency or anybody for services that already the state is going to pay to deliver if in fact that happens. That's all I'm looking for, is that we're at a shorter locked in time period on this specific set of services if in fact, depending on how everything else falls in place. That's all I'm asking for, since we did know that we do know that we still have questions unanswered. And I don't think that's all I'm asking for, is a shorter time frame so we're not locked in. Deb gave some very good examples of already problems here, in that YSS will be setting up to deliver some of these services, which CFR could deliver with Iowa Department of Public Health money. We've already got that.
After the assessment is completed, they could deliver them.
They can. They could deliver them
Okay.
today, but they have that separate grant to do
The
it.
assessment has to come first.
Right.
So we have services being provided now by YSS. They need to plan. They don't know how long it's going to take to have the assessment done. They don't know when they might not be being asked to do the services. Somebody's got to plan the services for a school year starting, correct?
Yes, and that is a concern that I have, is they're planning now, so this is a very unfortunate situation, and that's why I'm back to the 60 days notice versus the 90. Like I said, for me it seemed legitimate so that YSS could go ahead and plan. YSS could go ahead and schedule their fall service delivery, because let's look at if it does take 5 months to sort this out. But knowing that they have a 60-day termination instead of 90-day, hopefully it will hold them back a bit from scheduling all the way through the rest of the year until we get this sorted out. That's why I'm asking for the shorter termination period. That's all I'm asking for, is on that particular set of subservices while we do sort this complication out.
So you're primarily looking at the public education and awareness.
Yes,
That's
yes.
it. So
The 97,000. So the rest of the contract is fine. Now, Andrew's already signed it, which is why also either we, I guess, approve today, or we could make a formal motion to go back, on that. Could come back next week after more discussion with the county attorney, more discussion with staff, with discussion now in depth once again with Michelle and Andrew Allerland about where they stand right now. It could be the 90 days is what we go with next week. I'm just looking at what the alternate might be.
What if we did this? What if we put the contract as is on the budget or on the agenda for next week, and we ask Andrew to be here and to present his position?
Well, and we can get, and we can get information from CFR, and somebody from CFR can come too. They can provide to us exactly what they foresee what might happen. Yeah.
Okay, we've had a fairly lengthy discussion here today, which I think is good in terms of getting the issues out. I'm still feeling like there's a lot of uncertainties about it. I hope we don't have to, I'm trying to think how it'll go next week if we rehash the same, the same information, because our third supervisor isn't here, and we probably will. But what I would ask is that, Deb, if you can give a succinct presentation, hit the highlights next time, and then we'll allow Andrew to have some discussion, and if CFR wants to have somebody here, or to make, or give his druthers on the whole thing, and if CFR wants to have somebody here, but let's have Deb take the lead in getting all the information pulled together and presenting.
That's fine. That is where, when she went to talk to the admin team, that's where we thought we were going to end up on it. And then the issue, I know one thing that was addressed is CFR is not an asset agency. We can't force them to come to the table. We can force YSS to come to the table with the asset team, or us. But so yeah.
Well, the other unknown, and it remains to be an unknown, is the outcome of the ALJ hearing. I mean, that kind of put everything on hold until we knew where that was going to land.
And it sounds to me like if the appeal is just in terms of was the RFP appropriately sent out, drafted and sent out, that could, if the answer to that was a yes, that would make yet more delays, because there would be some other process there, and I don't know if it'd be rebidding or what in the world that might be. So I still see that it's a long time before we get answers, which is why I'm not in charge. I'm not in favor of just doing, making any changes right now. 60 to 90 days is not a long period of time. I don't have the contract in front of me, so I don't know how much money that is, but given all
97, we'd be talking some portion of the 97,000.
In the contract, it's $97,665. But again, that's
for the year.
Yes, and that's, but we would have to, with YSS's assistance, I guess, figure out a percentage of what of that is not substance abuse related, and it's all their other topics.
So you said it's $97,000 a year that we're talking about
from the county, $97,665.
So that's $8,000 a month, and it's not all of that; it's part of that
Correct.
we would be looking at.
Correct.
I'm still, but my position on this, on it is that it's still money we turned. We turned people down in the asset process, and I just think that we have, regardless of the issue, when we find out that there's other money, other funding available to pay for a service, why would we duplicate that service if, in fact, it's a duplicate service? So, you feel it's small change. I don't think it's small change, and I think we also need to be very careful we don't set a precedent.
I don't think anything is small change. I'm just looking at an amount of money versus all the unknowns, and making a change in what we are normally doing here versus all the unknowns. And I just don't know that we even utilize this.
Right.
That's what I'm looking at. If we'd even utilize this.
The split
60
between
versus
the 60
the 90.
and the 90.
Yeah, I don't see it as being
Okay. All right. I'm fine with coming back next week on this, and we'll invite both agencies to come. Deb pulling together a report here on this as to the extent that you can on that, with a timeline about just, like I said, how long we've even known about this. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Okay, we'll go on to public hearing items, I believe, and the first one is consideration of proposed plans, specifications, and form of contract for the Hickory Grove Park Beach House replacement. Mike Cox and Brian.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hi.
Let's see. So, on a very positive note, we are making some significant improvements out at Hickory Grove Lake, and as we speak, and it's a lake that park that has really been very largely untouched since its construction. So the original infrastructure that's had 50 years of very heavy use now and is showing its age, and we've made some improvements over time. What we're asking for today is for your approval to release bid packages to solicit some bids for replacement of the existing beach house with a new facility. They'll be placed in a little better location and be a little more functional for today's uses versus the types of uses that happened 50 years ago at the beach. And so with me today is Ryan Wemold, our park superintendent, and he'll go through a little bit more in detail about what we're asking for.
You bet. So as Mike mentioned, we've been working on design with this project with WHKS at Ames. We've come up with a design that we think is going to fit our users' needs a little better. So as Mike mentioned, this building will be on the same site at Hickory Grove, right overlooking the beach, so this will be a little more centralized. So this gives us better visibility over the site, better command of the site to ensure user safety, and also more centralized access for people coming from that parking lot to the beach. So as you can see here is our design plans on the right. This is what the ground layout looks like. It's hard to tell from this map. This area up here is the parking lot. This right here is our trail, so you can see it's just perched up there on this flat area, and then there's contours as you go down that hill towards the beach. So this new facility will have 4 family-style restrooms on the outside, which include toilet and sinks in there, but they're lockable, independent restrooms. Also can be used as changing rooms, obviously. This front area, the center, will have a roll-up door. It's a concession area, so we'll still be offering that amenity there at the beach, which is pretty popular. Behind that, you'll see on the back side of the building towards the parking lot is a storage area. We'll have a water heater and also use all our restroom supplies and vending supplies for the concession area. Then there'll also be 2 chase rooms here, which allows better access to the infrastructure there for winterization of this unit. So just perched over to the west side of the building is a outdoor rinse station, which will have shower heads coming off both sides that will rinse from the top up and also the waist down. So it'll have double spigots on both sides, allowing people to rinse off that sand and that water off the mattress that you use. So the building will have a concrete patio around it, drinking fountain attached to the building, and we'll try to get it to match this existing building that is shown here in the bottom left of the picture. That's our campground building over at Breezy Bay Campground there. So we'll match that block look and the brown tin roof on top. We are requesting a prefabricated building. So the benefits of that prefabricated building, it's a 4-inch precast concrete. It comes in 3 sections. It's set on site with the crane onto the foundation, and everything's secured together. So the benefits of that are that it's extremely durable and it's very cost efficient, which we obviously like both of those items when we're seeking a functional building like this. So just a quick rundown of this is a pretty straightforward project. We need a new foundation built. We need to install those utilities, reroute them on site to the new location. The contractor will need to order and set that building in place, complete the rest of the site instruction and amenities, complete a survey, and then just follow all stabilization items according to SUDA. So for bid opening, we have June 11th, 2019 as our opening date. Substantial completion of this project will be November 30th of 2019, and we'll be posting this project for contractors on our county website under services bid postings. So with that, we ask consideration for approval.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Okay, since I do go out there and swim, or
Yep.
was out going out there and swimming, so I would move that we approve.
wait.
I'm sorry.
It's a
Yes.
public hearing.
I'm sorry. Okay. I got so excited I jumped ahead of the public. Sorry about that.
Can we ask questions before or after the public hearing, which is preferred?
I would think we would do you two or
Yeah,
ask them.
if we have questions.
Right.
You can do it now.
Okay, do you have any questions?
I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Did I see what the square footage was of the building? Square footage? Did I miss that?
Yeah, it's about 21 and a half by, just trying to dial in here, like 40, sorry, I can't see it very well.
It's over 8,000.
I'm not seeing horizontal.
Okay, 21 is one of the dimensions. That's
I think
okay.
it's 21 by 32 or something like that off the top of my head, but
Okay,
I don't have that.
That's approximately 700 square feet.
thank you.
Something that we didn't mention is we have gone through the county permitting process for this project as well. So it's gone through the
700.
planning and zoning board commissions.
Okay. Yeah, 700. Okay, it's a public hearing item, so I would open the hearing if any members of the public want to comment.
What's the storm shelter rating on that building? Does it have any sort of rating?
You have to go to the line.
Todd, you have to come.
Sorry.
Yeah.
All right, never mind.
I see nobody moving to the mic, so I'll close the public hearing, but I'll ask a question about what's the storm shelter rating of that building?
This building is not rated as a storm shelter.
It's not. Is there one close by then?
The one that you see in the picture over at the campground is rated as a storm shelter, designed specifically with that in mind, and that has a capacity of just shy of 200 people.
200. And how close is that?
How close is that?
Mhm.
I'm going to say that's approximately a quarter of a mile.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Maybe a 10-minute, no, maybe a 5-minute walk under normal situations, and under emergency situation, maybe a 3-minute.
We do have an emergency protocol that our rangers follow in the event of a storm where we notify the public and urge them to utilize the on-site storm shelter. So although this new building is not certified as much as our other campground building, it is 4-inch precast concrete with rebar going through it. So it's a vast upgrade in a storm situation versus our current facility.
Okay. Okay.
One question I have on this. Okay, I'll come to it. Just a quick one. Hey, on the parking lot, I guess I can't quite tell.
Brett, identify yourself. Sorry.
What's that?
You have to identify yourself.
Oh,
Remember,
Brett
it's public
McLean, Story County Veterans Affairs.
Did I
On
close
the parking lot,
hearing?
with that
Excuse me,
being...
Brett, did I close the public hearing?
So, yeah.
I thought I closed it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, is there a motion?
I'd be happy to ask that question if Brett wants to whisper in my ear or write it on a piece of paper. Or do you want to?
I was just wondering, like on the parking, with the new location, are we going to have to do more with parking, or how's that
Okay.
play out?
So would you repeat the question, Mike, for the record? I think you heard it and I didn't.
He asked about the parking.
Yeah, we're not anticipating any changes to the parking lot with this new layout. So I don't know if you can see here, but the existing beach house is, if you can see my cursor on the screen, the existing beach house is right here. And you see these areas right here, this open, there's no roof. These are walls, privacy walls, but this is the old style beach house that went up in beaches all across Iowa and nationally for that purpose. But these were men's and women's changing areas and showers. So no roof, open air type of facility. And then what we're suggesting here is that we will relocate this so it's closer to a parking lot. It's easier accessible for those with accessibility concerns, and no impacts to existing parking lot. Eventually, we will have additional parking, and specifically some ADA parking. And now my mouse just there it is, right in here. Associated with our lake renovation project, so we'll have some better beach accessibility again for people with accessibility limitations right here, and this will be easier to assess as well. So, no short answer is no parking lot implications with this project.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve as presented.
Okay, second. Olson?
Aye.
Merkin, aye. Thank you very much. Do you have the next one as well?
Sleepy Hollow, right? Okay.
Consideration of resolution number 19108 to enter into a purchase agreement for property known as parcel D, otherwise known as Sleepy Hollow Edition.
Yeah,
take it away.
Very good. Thanks again. I think you're aware we had an opportunity come up some time ago when the landowner actually started by approaching our county planning and zoning office, planning and development, and requested some information about potentials with their property. And the planning and development staff referred them to us. This landowner was interested in permanently protecting his land and making that available for public use. So we worked with him in order to do so. The land in question is these two parcels outlined in red or yellow right here. This, to give you a frame of reference, this is Ada Hayden Lake. City of Ames, of course, is just to the south here, just below the diagram. Riverside Road here, Highway 69 here. This area right here is currently county owned. All of this property. This is our Sleepy Hollow access, which is a very heavily used river access point. And so what we're requesting today with the recommendation of the Conservation Board is to sign the purchase agreement with the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation, who now owns this property, and make that available for public use and put it on the county roster of public lands. So I think that's an important piece. It will provide, in addition to just recreation benefits, but more of a buffer for a greenbelt, has some water quality benefits as well as additional recreational opportunities for folks. So it's a nice project. It's been supported by a number of groups thus far. Story County Pheasants Forever, Big Blue Stem Audubon Society, Outdoor Alliance of Story County are just a few of the groups that have got behind this and provided some donations.
Can you remind us what the total of the donations was? It was several $1,000s, wasn't it?
To date, we've got 13,000, and then we've got additional pledges as well.
Okay. Loris, do you have any questions?
I don't. Another good job of being able to use some private donation money and then the energy transfer money to go ahead and put this land under our control. It's a well-used access, and so now there's some additional use there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't have any questions. I entertain a motion.
No, it's a public hearing.
Oh, thank you. I would now open the public hearing. Does anybody in the public have any comments? And if so, would you please move to the microphone? Seeing nobody, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I move that we do the approval as presented.
Okay, and I second.
Aye.
And aye. It is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Additional items. First is discussion and consideration of statement of work between Story County and Calhoun Communications for the Animal Control Facility Network.
Good morning.
Good morning, Board. Barb Steinbach and Kyle Bestie, Story County IT.
Is that microphone still on?
There's no on-off on it. It's pressed to mute now. We changed that. You can't hear me?
Yes. No, I can't, and you're not recording.
It's on. Is this better?
Just keep going.
So we're bringing to you a project to bring the animal control facility onto the Story County network. This is a budgeted project for FY 2020, and the reason we're here today is we'd like to get started. There's a lot of background work that needs to be done before we can actually implement this. And what this will do, it will help then with the other projects at Animal Control. They want to introduce some cameras and door security and fire suppression. So what we're suggesting today is a radio connection. We call it a microwave in loose terms, but it is actually a radio connection. And we've looked at hardwiring, we've looked at upgrading their Windstream connection, and this, in our eyes, just seems to be the most stable and the one that makes most sense. And what it is, there will be a tower on the roof at Animal Control. It's non-threatening to the load bearing on the roof, so, and we've spoken to facilities, they don't have a problem with it. And then it will connect to the tower here on this building. So line of sight was taken into consideration, and the different times of the year, you know, when the leaves are on the trees and when they're not. And so the frequency was adjusted to accommodate that. But otherwise, this is a fairly straightforward solution. There's about $8,000 worth of equipment and then $6,000 worth of labor. And what is included then is a 5-year maintenance agreement on top of this. So this is a one-time fee. There's no annual or monthly fees, no monthly charges. And what this will also do, so it'll give Animal Control the ability to use the network shared drives. They'll be able to put in help desk tickets, use the email instead of going to webmail. The phones eventually, we'd like to hold off on the phones until we're done with our Arion redundant situation, and then bring them on with the phones too, so then they'll be able to have 4-digit dialing between the offices. So it's exciting, and just wanted to bring it to your attention and ask for your approval. Do you have any questions?
I don't. This morning's kind of nice. There's some projects, some discussions that have been going on several months. They're getting wrapped up, so it's a nice morning. So thank you for that. Yeah.
You're welcome.
And I have no questions. Good work. And entertain a motion.
I would move that we approve as presented.
Second. Olson?
Aye.
Merkin, aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you. Now, discussion and consideration of appointment to the Board of Health for a full year term ending 12/31/22. I'm recommending Molly Lee to be on the Board of Health. She is a veterinarian here. She has a very wide, varied background, particularly is interested in something called One Health, which was a very interesting concept to hear about. So I would entertain a motion to appoint Molly.
I would so move the appointment of Molly Lee.
Okay, and I would second that. Any discussion?
None.
Olson?
Aye.
Merkin, aye. Motion carries. Next, we have Carla Webb for consideration of purchase of two 2018 Toyota RAV4 hybrid LEs.
Good morning.
And Brett.
Good morning.
Okay.
Brett's joining me today because he's helped work on this
okay.
project. So what we're bringing before you today is a request to purchase two 2019 Toyota RAV4 hybrid LE vehicles. We would be looking at trading in the two existing vehicles that we have. right now. We'd like to make this purchase yet in FY19. It would come out of county-wide funds, is my understanding. If you recall, during the Community Services budget work session for FY20, I had brought to you a request regarding replacing our vehicles in FY20, and the board had discussion at that time about going ahead and looking at doing that in FY19 out of county-wide funds. And it was suggested that we look at small SUV hybrid vehicles. So that's what we've done. We did test drive a Toyota RAV4 hybrid, and then did seek out 2 quotes. We worked with Wilson of Ames and then Toyota of Des Moines. And I provided to you a summary of the information that I've gathered. My recommendation today would be to purchase through Toyota of Des Moines. They're giving us a little bit better price, and then offering 2 additional warranties pretty much above what Wilson Toyota is offering. Do you have it? I did bring some pictures of the vehicles if you would. They're stock photos, but I'd be happy to share those if you would like to look at those.
I'm good, and
I know what they look like.
Okay, do you have one?
I have one.
One job to go look at vehicles and you don't have to come out of your pocket, you know?
And I will tell you, they're a very versatile vehicle. I imagine sometimes you end up toting things around, helping people with things, and they're small, but they have an amazing amount of room inside.
Yeah, they're very roomy, and I think it will be helpful for Brett when he has Veterans Affairs
For sure.
events and that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have no questions then, and I'll make a motion that we go as presented here with the purchase. And you said that was out of Toyota of Des Moines, correct? With the vendor of Toyota of Des
I'll
Moines.
second the motion. Olson?
Aye.
Merkin, aye. Motion carries.
Okay,
Now,
thank
what
you.
happens if they do end up being the same color as Linda's Toyota, though?
Well, you wouldn't.
They're black. What color?
They're black.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, we're good.
We're good?
Yeah.
Well, ours will have the emblem on it.
Yeah,
too.
mine will just have the dirt on it has right now.
It
Okay,
doesn't seem to be your typical government vehicle. So
It does.
nice.
yeah.
Thank you.
Now, thank you. Now we'll go on to consideration of purchase of patrol rifles, vehicle mounts, and ammunition for Story County Conservation. Ryan, thank you.
Ryan Wemo, Park Superintendent with Story County Conservation. This consideration today stems from a conversation that we brought forward at our FY20 budget hearing, where the Conservation Law Enforcement Department was asking to implement patrol rifles into our program. At that time, we had a very good conversation on the justifications of which, and the supervisors directed us to go ahead and investigate that for procurement in FY19. So we went and worked with other agencies, local and around the state on the county conservation level, and with our Story County Sheriff's Office, and wrote some specifications for what those patrol rifles needed to be. We competed that, and then also sought pricing on vehicle mounts and ammunition to go with those patrol rifles. So here today to ask for your consideration on those purchases.
This is from FY19 funds. You're going to purchase it.
Correct.
And we don't need a budget amendment, correct?
Already
Or I did
completed.
that. Good. It was in the budget amendment last time? Okay. Good, because we can't do it anymore. It's too
Right,
late.
yes.
It's too late for another one, so I just wanted to check. Loris, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I think we covered it pretty thoroughly back in January. So I would make a motion that we once again approve as presented.
Second. Olson?
Aye.
Merkin, aye. Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your support.
Now we have conservation again. Consideration of contract with Houston Engineering, or is it Houston? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So,
Aye.
Hey, so this is another project. It's exciting to be able to bring this forward for your consideration. What we're asking for today is your consideration of entering a contract with Houston Engineering to do some preliminary work on exploring some options for low head dam mitigation at the Hannums Mill Dam. I think we all know the history of that particular dam. Unfortunately, we've had 2 fatalities there. Under high water circumstances, it is a very dangerous situation, and under normal water circumstances, it is still a dangerous situation for river users. And we built a portage around it a few years ago with the support from the state Department of Natural Resources and their Water Trails program. And so we've been able to mitigate a little bit of that public safety concern. Now it's time that the Conservation Board feels that we should just move forward and use energy transfer funds to enter into this contract with Houston to just help us identify and take us through a public vetting process and identify some options for that. At this point, this contract does not include any engineering design of what that might be, of what the construction might be, but more so just to help us identify some options, identify whether we do a removal or a mitigation, etc. There is some historic significance with this low head dam, and so we want to be sensitive to that, and at the same time sensitive to the safety risk and to the improving the fish passage or the natural conditions of the river there. So it's a nice project to be able to move forward with, and in the end we'll have a uplift to the community and to the Greenbelt and Water Trail when we have this done. So asking for your consideration on entering this contract and using energy transfer funds for it.
Okay, questions?
No questions?
Okay, would I entertain a motion?
I would. I think this is a good use of the funds. So I would move that we do as presented once again.
Okay, and I would second the approval of the contract with the ETP funds. All in favor? Olson?
Aye.
Merkin, aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next we have discussion and consideration of Resolution 19.116, the Han Residential Partial Subdivision. Amelia Schoeneman.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Amelia.
Hi. Okay, so this is a residential parcel subdivision in Union Township, just outside of Maxwell and Cambridge, but not within 2 miles of either. So we're in the A1 Agricultural District. Oh, here's a location map so you can kind of see the general location. This property is a farmstead that was divided in 2004 from the adjacent farmland, so any further divisions require a subdivision. They want to create one additional lot buildable for a dwelling, and so they have to go through the residential parcel subdivision process to make sure that it meets an exception to the 35-acre requirement in the A1 Agricultural District. Here is the proposed division, the plat. You can see the existing house will be located on Lot 2. That's the farmstead built in 1923. And then they're creating proposed Lot 1 to be buildable for a dwelling. The owner intends to place a manufactured dwelling on the property and then build a stick-built dwelling within the next 3 to 5 years and remove the manufactured home, and plans on selling Lot 2 with the existing dwelling to a different owner. There will be a shared access easement. You can see that that is located actually on proposed Lot 2, but we did get the written document as well. And that will just eliminate number of driveways off of 315th and ensure the spacing between driveways is met. This is
area is designated as rural residential by the Cornerstone to Capstone Plan. There's no agricultural use on the actual property that the subdivision, the subject property, is located on. It's the original farmstead area. So reviewing aerial photos have shown that this was always the farmstead area, not in row crops. So they're not taking any farmland out of production, and there's also no natural resources. So principles for the rural residential designation of minimizing conflicts with agricultural uses or natural resources are met. And once we've done this division, there's no further divisions that may take place within this existing A1 agricultural zoning district. So it will just be one further division of this property. Here's the surrounding land use. You can see it's mainly large agricultural parcels. There's only, within a quarter mile, one other dwelling. There is a farmstead located over a quarter mile away. And within a quarter of a mile, there are 16 parcels that meet our 35-acre requirement that could be built on as well. And again, we are about 2.5 to 3 miles from Cambridge and Maxwell. So this is looking south on proposed Lot 2, where the manufactured home and then dwelling will be constructed. This is looking south on proposed Lot 1 with the existing dwelling. The nice dog. This is looking south on proposed Lot 1, and the accessory structures related to the original farmstead. There's some sheds, pole barn, and a corn crib. And this is the shared driveway. This is, again, the dwelling, just looking down 315th, and then the other direction, down 315th, kind of looking at the surrounding agricultural uses. We routed this to property owners within a quarter mile and county departments. Engineer just had a note that if there is any changes to the existing driveway, that will require a permit from their office. And environmental health noted that they have already applied for a septic application. So they're good on that front. They're ahead of the game. And then we haven't received any comments on the subdivision as of the writing of this report or the posting from the public. So with that, points to consider: all the requirements for a residential parcel subdivision are met. Both lots will have frontage on 315th, which is a gravel road, and will share an access. This proposed subdivision meets the principles for the rural residential designation in the C2C plan. No lands being taken out of agricultural production. And it's generally, the vicinity is larger agricultural parcels with one other single-family dwelling within a quarter mile. So it's within the character of the area, too. So with that, Planning and Development staff recommend Alternative 1, approval of the subdivision plat. And the applicant and property owner is also here if you have any questions for him.
I don't have any questions, do you?
I don't. Seems pretty straightforward.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion.
I move that we approve Resolution 19-116, the residential parcel subdivision plat, Han subdivision, as put forth in SUB 07-19.
Okay, and I'd second the motion. Olson?
Aye.
Merkin? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thanks.
So now we have Jerry Moore, discussion and consideration of report on the comprehensive review and update of LISA.
Good
We're
morning.
waiting on the edges of our chairs to hear this.
Good. Before I start, I'd like to introduce our new planning and development intern. We did bring him up a few times to the board office to try to introduce everybody. But Gabe Nelson, you want to stand up and wave? He's an Iowa State grad student in community and regional planning and has another year left. But he started yesterday, and we're very happy that he's here. We have a lot of things for him to do. So land evaluation site assessment is what I'm here to talk about. Okay, this item was actually on the 2018 Planning and Development Work Program. It was carried forward for this year. And actually, the review task comes from the Cornerstone and Capstone Comprehensive Plan. It's in the Foundation chapter under Agricultural Resources. It's a strategy for goal number 1, which is to protect agricultural practices in areas with prime soils and viable agricultural interest. Prior to the adoption of the land evaluation site assessment, the county used the corn suitability rating to determine soil suitability and disposition for agricultural use. Both of these systems were developed by the USDA, United States Department of Ag, and Natural Resource Conservation Service. We learned by doing some research, looking through our records, that the previous planning and development staff worked with a committee, and they spent 3 years studying this. This is something that they spent a lot of time considering. So this was adopted back in 1986, and so we've been using this system for 33 years. The process that they went through, we put a copy of the report on the Agenda Center for you to take a look at. It's very detailed about the approach that they took. They did a random sample of 96 agricultural properties of the over 9,800 agricultural parcels to determine the LISA threshold numbers, the questions that should be asked, the weight factors to determine the process, and its overall effectiveness in protecting prime farm ground, which is the goal. So the way that we preserve highly productive agricultural land is through the land development regulations, and we require property research application fee. It's a $30 submittal, but we use it when we review requests to divide property. Usually it's a request to divide to add another dwelling on a parcel in an A1 district, and so the threshold score for the site needs to be less than 172 or less than 266 overall. We also use it for reviewing requests for conditional use permits. Some of these things you can do in certain districts with a conditional use permit if the overall score is less than 267. So if it falls within the range of 267 to 300, it's considered to be highly productive farm ground. So the goal is to protect agricultural practices and agricultural uses, and to keep other uses out of impacting farm ground. We also look at it, property research for rezoning requests. If a property is zoned A1 or A2 district, to change that to any other zoning district for another use, non-ag use. Again, if it falls within that threshold of 267 to 300, then they cannot, the property cannot be rezoned. And that's stated in the land development regulations, which is our county ordinance. This is kind of a capture of activity, property research applications since 2015. We had 11, had an increase to 49, which is a little over 300%. To date, we've had 14 requests, and we think we're probably going to be close to on track with what the level was in 2018. So we took the review that we did to the Planning and Zoning Commission 4 different times. We started in August. The planning intern did a lot of work, Ryan, and he learned through his research that there's only 6 counties in the state that have a land evaluation site assessment program that they use to evaluate properties to decide whether or not the land should be changed from agricultural use to some other use. We received most information from Black Hawk County and Lynn County, and so we put together some general facts and learned that they do not put the scores, the total scores, online for the property owners or the general public. I think there's a concern that you have because areas change, these scores can change over time. And then also that the planning staff do the calculations. They don't have a computer that does it. However, we do use our GIS system to do part of the reviews. And then what they're doing that we want to do is be more forthcoming with the information, with the forms, with the process, what we actually consider when we look at the questions. There's 10 questions. So they're putting this information out on their websites. At the September 5th meeting, we explained the LISA system that we use in the county, provided some details about the form. There's information about the site itself. There's questions, 10 questions that generally measure and evaluate the property's disposition to ag use, potential transitioning to other uses based on adjacent property, nearby uses, municipal improvements, sewer, water, transit services, that type of thing. We also went through an actual property research request that we had. So at the February 6th meeting, this is where we got obtained a lot of really good input from the commission. We provided the background information that the planning staff prior to us went through in the committee to adopt this system that we have. And ultimately, they took action to approve. They made a recommendation to add a condition at their February 6th meeting. But what we provided to the Planning and Zoning Commission was this analysis, and that is that the current system has been effective in evaluating the productivity of soil and ag value for agricultural use of properties. It's done what it's been intended to do to determine those properties that have higher suitability for agricultural use and those that may be transitioning to other uses. And we're doing that through the property research application. Again, it's for conditional use permit request and rezoning application request. The current approach and questions are reasonable, and those questions that were developed in 1986 are the same questions that we have today. So it's reasonable to provide the evaluation that we do. We can add questions to the system. However, it would require a statistical analysis that was done prior to, that was done in the 80s. We think keeping the current system has merit. It can be automated, but it would likely involve the county hiring a consultant to do a model, a GIS model. And then once that's developed, it's got to be managed. It has to be maintained, so you're going to have more staff time involved in that as well. So I think the beauty of the system that we have now is it's been in effect for many years. People are aware that we have this process in place, and property owners, people who are interested in acquiring property, come to us and they communicate with us, and we have an open dialogue about their project. And in most cases, they're having that communication with staff to learn about what the requirements are that the county adopted before they hire a land surveyor, before they hire architects and attorneys to do their project. And in return, we think we're putting out a pretty good report. We've added a summary to simplify things on the first page to really get to what their questions are. And we try to provide people with some options. If they can't do what they want to do, what they're requesting to do, we try to give them some alternative courses of action to follow. We know that we need to add some definitions to the system. We want to make that available on our website, and then try to obtain some information from cities with regard to where the water system and the sewer lines are and fertilizer sales, because that information, those services change. And then details, Commissioner Smith, this was at the February 6th meeting, did support an automated system, but does see merit of being more transparent. This is kind of a message that he provided at subsequent meetings, that it's important that we do all that we can to communicate to the general public the process that we go through, what we're thinking about when we're reviewing the questions, and again, being more transparent. Commissioner Cable, I think, is concerned in general about the land evaluation site assessment, and I think he's thinking that it restricts people from doing other uses. Again, we try to assure him that the goal is to protect the prime farm ground. That's why this system was adopted in the first place. We had a motion made by Commissioner Moore to provide all of the results of the analysis that we're doing. We have a concern about that because some areas change, and then it would make that information not relevant. It's fairly common for us to, when people come in requesting to do this, we'll look at our records, and if it looks like an area that's transitioned, we always run the numbers again just for current data. And so ultimately, a motion was made by Sherwood to add a condition, number 8, which is to provide the application, the form, a thorough written narrative and descriptions about each of the questions on the county's website, and that's what we agreed to do. And so that was their recommendation at the March 6th meeting, which was a 3-1 vote. That brings us to the conditions, which are continued use of the existing system, edit the form to reflect the change from the county development plan, which is what it was called, to the C2C plan, improve accuracy as originally intended, try to obtain the mapping data for actual water sewer line information instead of using the corporate limits as our distance information, updates fertilizer sales locations, add definitions to what agricultural land is, add definitions to fertilizer depot, public transit, and a built-up area. Built-up area is actually an incorporated area, a city. And then 6 and 8 really are similar. Provide the application form narrative of Lisa describing in detail our process and getting that on the website. And then continue to monitor these changes. And so with that, that brings us to the alternative, which is the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended that the Board of Supervisors approve the recommendation with the conditions that I went through. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Well, I just have a comment. I'm glad you're not going to put the Lisa scores on, because I think it would be misleading to people. People could look at something and say, oh, that's the Lisa score. Now I know for that land and I know what direction I can go. And they wouldn't think to call you and say, is that current?
There was a lot of discussion about trying to make it really simple, and I don't know that this can be that simple.
I don't think so either. From my experience with it, it's not simple. So thank you. Loris, do you have any questions or comments?
I do, and it's the opposite.
Okay.
I understand where Commissioner Moore was probably headed there. I think all of your concerns are valid about people not checking, but I also feel that if you've got a clearly worded statement on there that this is the number as of X date, property Lisa scores can change rapidly based on surrounding use. We do not certify this is what the Lisa score is today. And so, because I know when I go on and I search a website that has specific, addressing specific kind of detailed items, anything that can be provided to me if I'm not familiar every day with what happens in that department is it helps me formulate my questions that I'm going to pick up, that I'm going to ask when I pick up the phone. So, but it is not for me a mandatory need to put on. All right, I just want to affirm that I do see what he was saying.
And you could put a statement on saying you can contact us to get a Lisa score if we have one on a certain piece of property, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
So it is public information. Not everything that's public information is on a website.
Right.
And there's various
Any
reasons.
record that we have
Exactly.
regardless of the year, if somebody requests it, it's made available to them.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, it's a comment about a different way, but I certainly would not hold firm as far as changing what the recommendation is. I'm pleased that the commission supported keeping the LISA scoring system and keeping what we're doing. My question for you is, how much time do you think it takes staff to do each of the LISA scorings?
For me to do it, or for the planning staff?
Well, if they're two different answers, then they're two different answers.
No, I think it's one of those things, the more you do, the more efficient you can be at it, but, they can probably do them within 10 minutes, to be honest with you.
Because you had 46 requests last year,
Yeah.
49 the year before. That's one a week. So I was just wondering, are we spending 3 hours per
No.
one, or are we, you say 10?
The planning staff have gotten really efficient at it.
All right.
So, and a lot of times we'll just run them because we're curious. We don't wait for a submittal. There's times when we need to know what it is, and so they're very quick at it.
And then my next question is, how many times after providing the LISA score do you get any kickback from someone who wanted to use the land differently? I mean, it scores high, and you're saying, sorry, it's prime farm ground.
Yeah, I would say there's probably a percentage, but it's a small percentage of people that aren't satisfied with the response that they're getting. And like I said, we try to give them alternatives to, getting to what they're trying to accomplish. Maybe it's, but it's hard. It's hard because the way the code is written, if somebody wants to change their zoning and they're in an A1 or an A2 and they have a high LISA, it can't happen. And so that's pretty solid. In the places that I've worked, this is the first that I've seen that. So that shows me how important it is for the residents of Story County to have a system like this in place to do all that we can to keep it intact.
It's doing what it needs to do. It's just protecting prime farmland, and we don't create more farmland.
Right.
We have less rather than more every year, so that's the reason we have it.
Right.
And the only other question I had was, you said only 6 counties use the LISA. You didn't find any better approach anyplace, I assume, with any other counties.
No, we didn't. And that was kind of part of what we set out to do. And there's nuances to each of the systems. As I said, it's embedded with the USDA conservation service. But I mean, this is a system that was developed specific for Story County to benefit our needs. So, but we'll definitely keep our eye out for improvements to tweak the system that we have.
Thank you. Loris, if you don't have any other questions, I would entertain a motion.
Sure. I recommend that we approve keeping the LISA as in use with the planning and development staff, with the conditions 1 through 8 as listed on the form.
Okay, I second the motion. Olson?
Aye.
Merkin? Aye. We approve. Thank you very much,
Thank
Jerry.
you.
Thanks for all your hard work on this. And please thank the Planning and Zoning Commission, too. I know they sat through several meetings and worked on several.
We will. Thank you.
Okay, we're down to department reports now. And Joe Quaker's going to tell us about weeds.
And the rainy, wet season, what it's like out there, Joe.
Do you have something to show us?
Sun's shining in here.
What do you got, Joe?
I approach the bench.
Well, I don't know what you can do with that.
You better have a couple of these.
I've got a couple in my garden. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Well, at least
Anybody
you know
else?
what they are. I have no idea.
Check. We good? Great. Good morning.
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 So So today, well, we haven't chatted since about mid-February, I think. And my purpose today is to go quickly, but to prepare the board for weed season. It's coming. It's here. I'm going to give you a quick update on some things we've done since the last time we talked, some things we didn't get done, and go from there. So please ask questions if you have along the way. But first, I just want to thank the Board of Supervisors and the public and the conservation staff and Darren, other county staff, the engineer, on the support that my program, or the program you have with me directing, gets from everyone around. It's amazing. And I say that because there are other counties just adjacent to us, to the east and to the west, another county in the Amana Colony area, that, they still broadcast spray. Still, the old 70s retro boom trucks and things like that, and we're so progressive. I'm just glad we're out of that, and we have science that backs our decisions, and clean air and water and the quality of life. How's that? Okay, I'm done.
Sounds great.
So I'm going to get you ready for weed season, but first, we did have some weather this spring, made things a little crazy out there, as far as roads and also our drainage ditch system, hard to get to. It was hard to do any work along some of our open ditches, February, March, April. Actually, we didn't get anything done. So we did have a contract that was approved to get some trees and brush removed out of Hardin Story 3 drainage ditch. We didn't get to that, okay? It was too wet for the contractor to get in, and then by the time it dried, it didn't dry, it rained again, and it got planted adjacent to that, except, this is good to know, it was our first access lane that we planted along this open ditch, and we've been trying to promote that through meetings here and talking to the public, so we're actually able to get in at least and plant a 10-foot access lane, which is a buffer for all kinds of things, improve the water along this open ditch. So that was one of the things we got done in the drainage ditch system. So with that, burn season hit. Okay, we do prescribed fire. I just put down an over-the-top season. We did great, partly due to staffing, and kudos to my seasonal help in between the off time they had, to save on hours. They actually went up to the University of Northern Iowa, where they held a class for a day or two, and they received their minimum certification requirements that allow them to help us burn, and they did that, and that was great. So yeah, we got a lot of burning done. I don't have those numbers. I'll have them in a year-end report, but I don't want to bog it down. So now comes the weed season. It's this whole page here. Obviously, we calibrate our equipment, we get it ready, we're certified. Our seasonal staff is getting certified this week. They tried once at a free, they give the IDOLS has about 3 free days that people could go test. You normally have to pay $20 a test. And they attempted one and passed half their stuff. So hopefully this next free one coming up, they'll do a little better. But it's a tough test. It's getting tougher. And I helped develop some of the questions, so, the distractors are really distracting. How's that? The Board of Supervisors passed the weed resolution a couple weeks ago. The weed laws changed. Thank you. I'm not going to go through that resolution, but it still did keep some of the plants mandatory by Iowa Code 317 on there that we have to control. One of those is Canada thistle, musk thistle. A lot of the thistles that are in the genus Cirsium, a lot of those are native thistles. I brought a native thistle in a while back. They're the ones that have white underneath. We don't really get too excited about those, but they're still on that. We're excited to control them. They're still on the list. Which brings me to this little critter here. So I've had a few calls already on this one, and I think it's because it's been wet in the last few years. This thing likes its feet wet. This is equisetum or snake grass. It is a native plant. What I want to make clear to those listening outside these walls is I didn't plant this. It's a native. It comes in. It's there. Especially if there's a road construction project. These you move the soil around and the roots stay in the soil. It may spread by construction or other things, but we do get calls on if we're going to control this, and it's not on the noxious weed list. It's actually ideal nesting for a lot of ground nesting birds. I'll throw the pheasant out there, but not particularly just that one. A lot of the others. It grows in almost every place in the world except New Zealand, Australia, and I don't remember the other one, but we have it here all through the United States. So you may get some calls on this. Just please forward them to me, or however the protocol is. We can try to address that. When I'm telling landowners, if it's in our roadside, in the ditch, and is encroaching into their field, really deep tillage is the only way to control this.
Is it spread by laterals?
It is spread by spores.
Spores.
It's
okay.
It's unique.
I just wondered because I've seen it then way over,
Not seeds.
Spores.
The rarest vascular plants in the Equisaceae genus that reproduces by spores.
Okay.
All right. So we have a sensitive crop website we can go to. Anyone can. You can just Google it, and hopefully those folks that have grapes or any sensitive, just doesn't have to be organic. Okay, it can be any sensitive crop that you hold dear to your heart, and they have to register through IDALS, the Iowa Department of Ag Land Stewardship, and that way we know about you if we're going to do any herbicide application in the county. Okay, it's good for us to have that map, especially if we hire the brush contractors that will be coming in the late summer, early fall. We pay attention to that and make sure those roads are marked. And we also talk to these people, because if we're not going to apply herbicide or control the brush in their roadside, they have to. And we have the no spray permit in place now where, they get our signs and we'll go ahead and control what they need to, following all the safety protocol. So my point here is that went up 15 new farms in Story County. So that's kind of neat. There's a lot of people out there growing different things, and they're more aware. And the press release or the legal notice that follows the weed resolution that has to be published, this needs to happen this week, thou shalt control their weeds, public notice, does address that in a nice little paragraph. Hey, if you have any concerns, call my number. And please register. If you're a sensitive crop person, please register online. And so we know about you. Any questions? Linda, you're looking at me like you might have a question. Nope, you're good?
I just need the form.
Okay. The mowing law, I want to touch on that real quick. Put in place probably 10 years ago by the state of Iowa to try to reduce recreational mowing. There are several provisions in that law that allows people, and that date to start mowing is July 15th. So it just holds the mowing back a little bit. I think Minnesota is August 1st. So there's other days, but Iowa is July 15th. There are several provisions that allow for mowing, okay? The number one is safety. If there's a safety concern, the stuff's tall, go ahead and mow. And there's a dozen others, but I'll also do a press release. That's not a legal notice. That's just a press release on that, like I do every year. And again, that's to just to improve Iowa's roadsides as far as nesting and other things that live there, and just to delay a little bit so things have a chance. This doesn't keep the road department in any county from mowing the shoulders, with their shoulder mower to keep a safe zone. That's not what this law is about. It's just for more of the blanket mowing. Is that a word? Yeah. That happens. So Yeah, I'm about done. So we are planting. We did get the hydro seeder out of mothballs from the 4-H building that we store our equipment at, and it's ready to go. We've seeded probably a dozen loads, just touching up areas that received excess moisture that we did last fall. And my goal is to make things green, keeps the engineer happy, reduces soil erosion, things like that. We've done a lot of annual rye, but not a lot of permanent seed because it's been so wet and things get washed off. So I'm trying to let the weather. I mean, we've done a little bit. We've done some seeding on 600th again, on University, and a few box culverts. And Grant Avenue, south of Gilbert. So we've done some seeding to touch up areas that have been hit by the water. Standing water, doesn't do well. Plants, the new baby plants, they don't do well underwater for very long. So we're still on that. In a couple of weeks, we're going to pick up $9,000 worth of TAP seed, Transportation Enhanced Program seed, TAP seed. It was a grant we submitted last year. So that is prairie seed at about $300 an acre. It's a okay mix. So we put in for 30 acres. We're getting $9,000 worth. That will help a lot in seeding the areas that the road department has scheduled for construction, bridges, new road regrades, things like that. And then not to mention, we have 3 other and that came through the Living Roadway Trust Fund through TAP. So we all put in, all the counties that wanted it put in, and then they submitted one big grant for seed in order to get a better buying power, if that makes sense to you. And then locally, Story County, the roadside program, we're going to put in for 3 grants. I've talked about this to help subsidize the budgeted money we have, if that's the right word, you can correct me, on buying new spray equipment. Our sprayers are outdated. Our main roadside sprayer was started in 2000. We've added to it, so now we have budgeted monies to purchase equipment, but we're hoping these grants will help offset some of that for us. And that's a new truck, a new sprayer, and a GPS system so you can follow wherever I go, if you want to try.
Anything else?
Rick would have been proud.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Do you know what kind of seed mix you got for 300 an acre? I'm just curious.
What's that?
What kind of seed mix did you get?
It's about a 9 grass, 27 Forbes.
Oh, that's good.
And I can email that to you.
Okay. Well, that's good to get that much Forbes.
Yeah, it's just so it's not
standard.
crazy great, but it's good.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers. Yeah.
Sorry, I had a question. Sorry, Joe. Okay. All right. So, I know last year we talked, in fact, as you did your annual drive, the supervisor around the county, kind of pointing out some things and increasing knowledge. And we talked about increase in the municipalities, asking you to provide the noxious weed control. Are you having the same kind of volume of requests yet, or does the water impact that?
I think good. Thanks for reminding me of that. It's going to happen again. I mean, there's a lot of areas that we used to control that are now in corporate city limits, and they effectively Ames is doing a great job. I do think they've addressed that, but the other cities and things may need us. And what I've been doing is going ahead and controlling areas where we can and charging them for our time and labor. And that's where I'm at. We haven't had any requests yet, but those areas are still going to be there. So that's something that I'll need to address and write down and get after that.
And then the cities are still, that's working out to be a mutually comfortable situation. They're still paying. They haven't come back.
It's good. It's good energy for us to help them, and in turn they'll help us back.
Okay.
I'm sure.
Okay,
and the other thing too is, if you folks get time, I should email you and we could try to get another tour put together, especially on drainage ditches.
That was my comment down here. I wrote down. Remember to ask about that.
Excellent.
Sounds
All right.
Sounds like fun. Okay. Is there another name for this? I've never called it snake.
State grass equisetum,
Snake grass.
puzzle grass,
Yeah, I've got it. And
Any other
called it
names?
something else, and I can't remember what.
joint grass.
Joint
maybe?
grass. I've heard it called joint grass, but there's lots of joint grasses. So.
And
Okay.
does this, is it invasive as, I mean, I know it's native, but does it push to prevent others?
It's interesting, that plant, once it starts, and we'll look, when we go for a tour, I'll show you these spots, it can be a monoculture. So people, and most plants that belong don't do that. They mix with other plants and their relatives and get along. This one does become a monoculture, mainly because it grows in wet areas and a lot of stuff doesn't go there. I can talk about plants a long time.
Yeah, they seemed amused back there.
Thank you. Okay. Now, next we have Leanne Harder to speak about mission statement development.
You're checking the
Good
clock.
afternoon.
What?
I didn't want to say good morning if it passed the noon hour. What I'm here this afternoon to address the board is to kind of check in on the strategic plan that was adopted by the board late last fall, early winter. It is set up for a 5-year strategic plan, and one of the items that falls under the county operations section, under Objective 2, relates to the mission, a mission statement. It says, purposefully promote Story County's values and vision. Use the work already completed as a starting point to develop a comprehensive mission statement for Story County. So yes, Story County does not have a comprehensive mission statement. There is an accompanying action step that states create a task force of key staff members to create an overall central mission statement for Story County. So I'm here for this afternoon to do is to seek some direction from the board. Really, when is the time to go forward and start doing this? Again, it's a 5-year strategic plan. Help identify key staff members to form the task force, and then identify with whom the responsibility lies for project management, and then whether or not it'd be appropriate to put out some requests for bids for consulting to help us develop this. Are there any questions?
I think one of my comments, all right, is that in your last paragraph there, you talk about given upcoming changes with the board, new staff members. And so my thought, I always think of the immediate. I guess we figured out I'm kind of literal sometimes, right? Okay. So I'm thinking, oh, you want to start this right this quarter. No. All right. No. So that was one of my questions, is about more, where were you thinking about?
No, and that's why I'm here today, so we can start thinking that process through. Okay. Because we are coming into 6 months into year 1 of the strategic plan, and I really have not been before the board on any of the matters in the strategic plan to this point.
Okay. So my pushing back the immediate as in tomorrow, all right?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so that we at least get a few months here with our adjustments and changes we're coming. We're all going to be very busy, on that. So, okay, thank you for that. All right.
I have had some experience in a previous job with vision and mission statements. And when we did this for community corrections in Iowa, it was very helpful to have a consultant. In fact, the one thing I think we did right is we did not make very many decisions before we got a consultant in to look at the lay of the land and to basically train us in a process and help us decide who was our group. So I wouldn't think that starting the task force is the first thing to do unless it's very small. Maybe it's a couple people who work on it, maybe work on an RFP and work on getting a consultant and then go from there. Does that fit with what you're thinking about?
Yeah, the 3 bullet points aren't in any order. It's just some ideas of how to, I'm just here to get some direction from the board on what are the next steps. I mean, we're not going to iron it out today. Obviously, it'll come back to the board, but does this rest with me to bring it back to the board? Where does it go?
Would you accept working with an additional staff person on this so there's a team?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, because I think you definitely are one person, and I would ask if Alyssa Wignall would be willing to work on it as well.
And I think, yeah, with the kind of looking more at what would we do getting a consultant, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, do you have any idea, Leanne, about what a cost range would be?
No. What I can say, I know when we brought in Institute for Decision Making.
5 years ago, maybe?
I think it was even longer.
Was it? Wow.
That might be right, 2015, 14 and 15. Yeah, you might be right on that. That was a cost share approach. We did two things. We did the Institute for Decision Making to help with the vision, and that was, I think, a $3,000 to $5,000 range. Then we also worked with the Institute for Public Affairs through the University of Iowa to help guide the board with a strategic plan. And that was a cost share with Iowa State Association counties. And I think that all in was about $5,000. So I think probably $10,000 is probably the upper end is what I would expect. When we did the strategic plan last year, it was what, 15,000?
Okay, close to 15.
But that wasn't with the updates. So, okay.
But we have a vision statement that's in the C2C plan. That's not really widely known, as we've been reminded several times through staff training with different consultants. So that would be part of it too.
Now, the vision statement, I guess, here for me in the C2C plan, it seemed an economic development one. I didn't see it as encompassing all of the different functions that the county does and the different elected offices, et cetera. So that's just a comment. But okay. So thank you for the cost.
Yeah, I think that's valid. And I also think when you're talking about not many people know that we have a vision, I think that's one of the reasons why you really involve as many people as possible in development. And I think when I look at it, and I did take time to look at it, I think we have values set out very clearly. I'm not sure we have a real definitive vision statement.
I think there might have been, when the board adopted the strategic plan, we may have come closer to a vision statement when we shortened the value statements from the C2C plan in the strategic plan. But it's not it's definitely.
It's worth a revisit.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. That's what I would say. And then, and I also think, it just makes sense to have a very comprehensive process to me to involve a lot of staff. That's the experience I've had in developing vision and mission, and people could recite it. They knew where it was on the wall, but they could also, at least the beginning of it, it was lengthy, but they could recite the beginning of it and knew what it meant and knew how it impacted, how it fit with their daily work. So I'm all in for it. So you're looking for direction today.
Direction from the board, within whatever it is, within the next 3 months, within the next 5 months, within whatever the board's expectation is, that staff can come back to you with the kind of approach defined, and then go from there.
And Alyssa, I kind of put you on the spot here, but I know you've worked with consultants before. That's what I was thinking in that. And I just think it's good to have another person to bounce something like this off of.
I appreciate that.
Okay, so my sense would be that we would direct Leanne to work with, and Alyssa to work with her on developing a request for proposals or whatever the nomenclature would be to bring back for the board to look at.
How about with everything going on, maybe 120 days? Is that? I mean, I know for you're feeling your clock ticking.
No,
I know you were so organized.
I have enough other, and that's why I'm before you right now, knowing the impending changes so that we can start at least having this on the time frame. I was actually thinking early fall is what I was thinking.
Okay.
I was going to say October 1st. Is that too long?
What?
I was going to suggest like October 1st.
October 1?
Do you have the draft RFP?
Everything back
Okay.
It's not
Okay.
too long.
That lets us get through the
No, I
summer,
mean, we're
settle, get
already
everything
at almost
shaken
the
out.
beginning of June. It's really not that long.
Eek. Okay.
I know in the coming months, the board will be addressing urban renewal area. There'll be a number of items coming from to the board. And so that fits timely along with then coming back with our CIP next year too.
And we'll also give a new supervisor a time to get his or her feet wet and, have a little bit of experience to look at the RFP. So I think October 1 is a good goal.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else that you want to ask us?
Not right now.
Not right now.
There's a long list in the future.
Thank you for keeping this on the burner, moving it back up a little
Thank you.
further to the
You're
front.
welcome.
Okay. Upcoming agenda items. So next week we will revisit the YSS contract with some more information and some presentations. And I'm sure there will be other things that staff will be putting on the agenda. Do you have anything else that you're looking at?
It's my understanding, and I'm going to look out at Deb here to see if she knows more about this, but a couple weeks ago, Brooke Ramsey from Curtis said they were coming, and I believe she said it was the 28th, with the request for the $99,000 for our match for 5 new HERDA buses. Deb, would you want to elaborate?
Yeah, she sent that request to me late last week.
Okay.
And so I have that, and I put that on the agenda for earlier today for next week.
Okay, super.
And they have I think their annual report is next week as well, but the request is a separate additional item.
Right. That had
It's for 7
originally
vehicles.
come up. Wasn't that when it's back in October or November when they came to present on what the estimate would be to do a pilot program to move people between Nevada and Marshalltown on a work, to get workers back and forth.
They came back in December.
Oh,
and
thank
it
you.
mentioned at that time that DOT had been contacted about receiving funds, $7 million, I believe, and HERDA gets 10 vehicles within their catchment area. 7 of those are designated for Story County.
And they'll explain next week more about how they replace vehicles and why this is actually a good deal, even though $99,000 doesn't sound like it. We did not budget for it, Linda, because we were uncertain when actually that ask would even come. I brought it up during the hearing.
We talked about it during the budget session.
We talked about it during the budget sessions, but we didn't shove it into the budget.
What's their plan with their time frame?
They didn't know that. Go for it.
Yeah, they have a contract that needs to be signed in 60 days. They don't necessarily need the funds in 60 days, but they need a commitment from the county, from what I understand. The HERDA board wants that commitment before they sign the contract. And then the buses would arrive sometime during fiscal year 20.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll hear more next week then. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else that's going to be coming before us?
Not that I'm aware of right now.
Okay. Things will show up.
How about for you? Do you know?
No.
Okay.
No. So I'll open public forum number 2. Anything that was not on the agenda, of course, the board can't take any action on it at this meeting, but we might at future meetings. Does anybody have anything? Seeing nobody move to the microphone, I'll close public forum number 2. Liaison assignments, committee meeting updates, and announcements from the supervisors. Loris?
Okay, so last week, Supervisor Merkin and I went to Washington, D.C. I went as a member of the exec board, and you went as the chair, and I'll let you give updates on that. How about? Okay, I'll move on to my week. All right, so Story County Housing Trust Fund has a public hearing at 2 o'clock this afternoon. It's to award the rental assistance applications. The hearing is at the Ames Chamber office in Ames, and as a reminder, we're applying for some funding ourselves for the Home Base Iowa program. So the actual hearing and awarding will be at 2 o'clock. Tonight, then, I'll be in Grimes at the Central Iowa Regional Housing Authority. It is time for the annual meeting and election of the 2019 county representatives and alternates. It's a very bizarre way this all works out, Linda. I'll just explain to you when it's time to reappoint somebody from us, okay? And so that's going to be at 6:30 tonight. Thursday, I'll be at the Iowa Department of Transportation's annual meeting. That's all day in Ankeny at DMAC at the FFA Enrichment Center. And Friday, I've got the AADC board meeting, economic development, and then we're going to the ISU research park. So that kind of books up the week, and everybody have a safe Memorial Day. So.
Okay, thank you. And as Laura said, she and I were part of the Ames delegation to Washington, D.C. to meet with our members of Congress. We met with Senators Ernst and Grassley, met with Representatives Loebsack and
Axney.
Axney, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And several congressional staffers, and a lot of the issues that talked about were trade, and then we heard the news the next night, and a lot of things that people said were going to happen immediately happened, it seems, so I don't think we can take credit for it, but tariffs, USMCA, and all those things. We did talk with DOT officials about a bridge replacement that we have in a grant that evidently they're still looking at the grant application. We were hoping to have $600,000 in that. Not sure whether or not we'll get that because DOT told us at that point, well, we're going to make decisions soon on the bridge replacement grant, but we have the money that was asked was 10 times what's available. So when we met with Senator Grassley, we kind of encouraged him to say, we understand this continue because we have lots of rural infrastructure needs, which he was very aware of. Trying to think what other issues we were able to talk about. There were some
African swine fever.
African swine fever. The USDA is doing planning on that, and we do have a name of somebody in Des Moines that I'm going to pass on to Keith Morgan, our emergency management coordinator, because that was one of the things they're talking about is that at the federal level they were doing a lot of planning, and I just said, well, okay, but are you giving those plans out? Are you giving some idea what the planning is? And is there somebody we can deal with locally so we don't have to be, quite frankly, waiting for the federal government to get back to us, from Washington, D.C. And we have some information there, a person in Des Moines to talk to.
Rural water contracts.
Rural water we didn't get very far on the rural water issue. And I think what it is there is the grants that rural water agencies have gotten from USDA pretty much guarantee them that they serve the area and may continue to serve the area that they're originally serving. That's a problem when there's development that goes on and when a city develops out into a rural water district. And Nevada has had particular problems with that, with the Rural Water Association not allowing a buyout of rights, but to serve an area, but at the same time, the Rural Water Association does not have the capacity. And I know that around Ames, there's a lot of areas that are being developed, that Xenia has the water rights, and they will work with developers to buy them out, but it's not cheap to buy out a rural water grant. What I think actually is happening, a rural water program, what I think is actually happening is the USDA's primary concern is that they made these loans, and they want the money back on the loans. So they're not really, I don't think, wanting to push to change the legislation that exists. So I think that's kind of a difficult one. I don't know where the answer lies on that, but I know that the cities are going to be looking at it more and trying to figure out, how they can work better with the USDA and with the rural water districts, because and particularly I think for Nevada, it's been a real problem that's been reported on within the last year. The other one, there are a couple of veterans bills I know Brett McLean asked me to report on, and he's not here. I need to get back to him. It was Blue Waters for people who were in Vietnam in the Navy, and also on burn pits, which are in people who've been in the Middle East. The Blue Waters is if veterans have had exposure to something, usually it's just kind of land-based, but obviously people who've been out to sea, sometimes when they're close to shores, also can be exposed to things that give them health problems later. And the burn pits is basically that the military has been burning all their garbage in the Middle East, and people get exposed to things. So I need to follow up on it. What I believe I was told about that, and Deb, maybe you can help me get this back to Brett, is that those bills would have to be reintroduced. I think the time that they could be looked at was expired. And I think we should, push for reintroduction of those bills.
So I think that's a great recap. Yeah. The staff, I just want to compliment Drew Camp, who at one time was our Story County Economic Development liaison and went out and stuff. And now he has organized the last couple tours. And I was very impressed with how much access we got to high-level staffers. We also got to meet with people from the White House Public Liaison Department for an hour. So we had good access. We felt we were able to make our points quickly, and really even the senators were voting that day and they gave us 15, 20 minutes each and then went off to the vote. So yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Drew did an excellent job of taking care of us so we could focus on the issues. I know I have several meetings this week, and culminating in going to the research park on Friday. So I don't have anything else. So I would.
I move we adjourn.
I would second that motion. Also.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.